What is music? When we think about that long and hard, the dictionary defines it as vocal or instrumental sounds combined in such a way as to produce the beauty of form, harmony, expression, or emotion. But that's not what any of you thought. See, music's different for every person. Since 9th grade, my music's kind of changed for me. I attended a band camp at Central Washington University. I was there for about 2 weeks with about 250 other students from all across Washington from grades 9 through 12. That really changed my perspective on how I view music in general. Today I'm going to tell you about my love for jazz and the three main eras of jazz music. First, we'll go over the origins and history. Then we'll discuss the so-called jazz age, and then post-World War II jazz. I think everyone should listen to my speech today because music's important to all of us. It can help us calm down, it can help us relax, or it can help us get hyped up depending on what kind of music we listen to. After today, I hope that everyone here will be able to describe the three main eras of jazz with me and maybe walk away with a little bit of a different view on jazz music and maybe even an appreciation. So jazz originated in the late 19th century to the early 20th century as interpretations of American and European classical music with a spin of African and slave folk songs and influences from West African culture. Its composition and style has changed over the years, and many people put their own spin on it, which is what makes it interesting. Improvisation is also one of the main features of jazz music, which is cool because I could hand 50 different musicians the exact same notes written in the exact same order, and none of them would sound the same. That's just how jazz music works, and that's beautiful. So now that I've kind of discussed a little bit on the origins of jazz music, I'll tell you about the so-called jazz age. It's from about the 1920s to around the 1950s. From 1920 to 1933, Prohibition existed in the United States. This led to the creation of what some of you may remember in history class called speakeasies. These speakeasies were a huge central for jazz music because jazz music was kind of seen as the edgy kid those days. Some people even call it immoral, which is strange to think music is being immoral. They blamed it on the death of a famous composer of the time, and some people just thought that that was right. Yeah, jazz music killed this guy, when in reality it was just a heart attack that had nothing to do with jazz music. The 1930s belonged to the popular swing bands. Key figures in these bands developed the form of jazz over the ages. Some of these people included Count Basie, Cab Calloway, and Duke Ellington, and many others. Although swing was a collective sound of jazz music, swing also offered soloists many opportunities to improvise and grow as performers. A main contributor to this so-called jazz age was Duke Ellington himself. While everyone else was focusing on maintaining and developing jazz and swing music, he thought to take it in a different way. He took his orchestra and implemented sounds of harmony and musical form with complex compositions that would still translate well for his popular audiences. He kind of took the more simpler form of swing music and put his own spin on it, which completely changed everything. Some of his most famous works include Satin Doll and Don't Mean a Thing. His own popularity spanned across the United States and even into Europe. Now that I've talked about the origins of jazz, as well as the jazz age, we now come to my final point, which is post-World War II jazz. This spans from the 1950s all the way to present day. The outbreak of World War II marked a massive turning point for jazz music as a whole. The swing era of jazz, also the jazz age, of the previous decade had challenged other popular music, and people were trying to define that as American culture, which most people didn't like. With big bands reaching the height of the style's success in the early 1940s, swing acts and bands even traveled with the US military overseas to Europe, where it also became even more popular. This led to huge branching out of all new types of jazz, including bebop, Afro-Cuban jazz, also called cubop, hard bop, modal jazz, free jazz, and Latin jazz. These all played huge important roles in the development of music over the years, and still influence some people to this day. Since the 1990s, jazz has been characterized by a pluralism in which no one style dominates, but rather a wide range of styles and genres are still very popular. Individual performers often play in a variety of styles, sometimes in the same performance. Performers such as pianist Brad Meldau explored contemporary rock music within the context of traditional jazz and acoustic piano trio. Recording jazz this way kind of put a new jazz spin on any kind of music, because as many people know, jazz is really a broad playing field in music. Some groups, even such as Bad Plus, still have incorporated elements of free jazz into their music to this day, and they still come out with new music. Although it may not be popular, jazz music holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts, and I think that's kind of important to realize. In conclusion, today I've discussed the origins of jazz music, the jazz age, the importance of post-war jazz as well. I hope that you remember at least some of my speech, and maybe you have a better understanding of the history of jazz and its importance in American culture. I will now leave you with a quote from Duke Ellington himself. This is the answer to the question, what is music, that I first asked you. Music, of course, is what I hear and something I more or less live by. It's not an occupation or a profession, it's a compulsion. Thank you.